Bat Force Radio.
Bat Force Radio is rated M for mature, or should that be immature?
Hey guys, Dustin Wynn.
Hey, this is Scott Snyder.
This is Paul Dini.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
You're listening to Bat Force Radio.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, and you're listening to Bat Force Radio, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to Bat Force Radio, the Batman and DC podcast with no limits. This week we are joined by Bat Force Tom in California.
Howdy.
Legends of Lego Batman, also in California.
Oh, cheers.
And I'm Robin Cross in Canada. And this week's guest is an author and illustrator of comics like Bloody Hel and Dead Meat, co-host of the BatAss Batman the Animated Series podcast along with Sean Murphy, and also the author of the upcoming 2-issue Red Hood story as part of the Batman Beyond the White Knight miniseries. Welcome for the first time to the show, Mr. Clay McCormack.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm impressed that you went all the way back to Dead Meat. I mean, there's not too many other things to grab my name off of actually, but
cool stuff though. And I do like that with Bloody Hel you went back to some of the Dead Meat roots a little bit there.
Oh yes,
with
no, I got my start doing horror and zombie stuff, so it was only fair that I pay some tribute in my World War I Viking book and have zombies show up at a certain point. So
yeah, and we're going to get into lots of that and introduce Bloody Hel to anyone who may not already know it. But first of all, how are things on your end?
Good. Keeping busy, which is nice. I've got this Red Hood book coming out soon that you mentioned, so that's been doing a little bit of pre-press for that stuff, which has been fun, and working on some new stuff as well. So just kind of keeping at it.
Awesome. So I would like to start off with sort of your own origin story. Like what got you into not only comics but into art? Like, did you have a moment somewhere in childhood where there was a thing? Obviously you were a Batman the Animated Series fan, and now you guys are going into Batman Beyond for that podcast, but was there a thing like in your childhood that you remember seeing a comic or a piece of art that made you think that's what I want to do?
It's funny because I don't remember specifically what set me down the path, but I do actually remember, and I think I still have the first comic book I ever owned that was given to me by a cousin of mine. It was an issue of Nexus, the Steve Rude book.
Okay.
And that was the first, because I had been ever since I was very small, I had been into Ghostbusters and Batman and all of the more supernatural and fantastic things out there, but it kind of wasn't until I was handed a comic book that I realized, oh, there's a whole nother realm to this stuff, which then led me down to when I would hang out with my cousin, he would go to the store and he would pick up comics, and he would be grabbing Spider-Man, and this would be like the early 90s, so this is the McFarlane Spider-Man, the Larson Spider-Man. And that stuff really stood out to me, and I just kind of caught the bug from him, I think, and it just never left.
That's awesome, man. What kind of? I see that you have an amazing Wolfman decal on your mic, and then you mentioned the Ghostbusters, but what was because jumping not too far ahead, your style, dude, like it's so like. There's perfect for gore. It's perfect for horror.
Thanks.
What were the specifics like as far as like horror or stuff like that you caught on to when you were younger?
Well, Ghostbusters was probably the big intro for me. And I think after Ghostbusters, the next biggest influence in my horror upbringing was probably Are You Afraid of the Dark on Nickelodeon.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And it kind of grew from there into basically my maturation into horror kind of seemed to all happen on like Saturday nights on watching TV, because it went from Are You Afraid of the Dark, and then that moved into Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah.
And then from Tales from the Crypt, it moved to Monster Vision with Joe Bob Briggs. And that was kind of where everything sort of expanded out from. Excuse me. But it actually wasn't until high school that, because, you know, one of the things I love about horror is I like it because I find it scary. Like I do find things that are scary interesting to me. But when I was younger, there were some things that I just kind of shied away from. Like I had never watched any of the classic slasher movies. That, like, there was a certain line that I wasn't ready to cross until a friend of mine introduced me to Evil Dead. And after I watched I watched Evil Dead, excuse me, for the first time, the way everyone should watch Evil Dead for the first time, which was he handed me a video cassette that didn't have a cover to it. And it just said in a black and white sticker on it, The Evil Dead. And he's like, you need to go home and watch this. And I did. And, you know, that was kind of set the ball rolling for me down into all that stuff.
That's awesome. What a great intro as far as like visually for that.
Yeah, it was, you know, it was right around the time that I was really getting into watching movies more critically and really appreciating them as an art form and as something that people were actually making and storytelling and stuff. And so seeing a movie like that was, I think it had the effect on me that it has on a lot of people, which is, oh wow, this looks like a bunch of friends just did this in their backyard. And so it kind of brings things back down to earth, because if you're watching Star Wars, as I was, or these big budget stuff, all that stuff seems really far away and unattainable. But then when you see Sam Raimi and some nerds from Michigan making a scary ass horror movie, even though you can see all the seams, everything still works. It kind of makes it a little bit more reasonable a goal to try and it's a little more relatable. Let's put that way.
And like inspiring, maybe.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
What was when you were a kid, what were the first things that you remember drawing?
Ninja Turtles. Absolutely. Ninja Turtles and probably Batman. My mom always likes to tell me that she taught me how to draw knees, which is a really weird specific thing to say. Because I remember drawing Batman as when I was a little kid, and I just couldn't hack that area of the leg, and so she kind of helped me out and worked it out for me. And so that's the one piece of my artistic journey that she takes credit for.
Well, that's how you craft a good undeniable story.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Just have some detail there.
Is that a Clay McCormack Ninja Turtles?
Sure is.
No way. Look at that.
Yeah, thank you so much for.
I was wondering if you had ever drawn Ninja Turtles, because it was kind of off the wall request by me.
I've never done it professionally, honestly. That's so. I think you are the first person to get a professional Ninja Turtles drawing from me.
Damn, one of one.
Hearing your story, that makes it even better now.
How one of one?
Yeah, check those knees out.
Yeah,
they were great.
Well, the turtles are easy because they all wear knee pads.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I that was. You know, I kind of did things the way most kids do things, where you kind of gravitate towards stuff that has a bit of a formula to it. So once I kind of hacked the turtle head, you know, into a repeatable form, then it was like, oh yeah, it's really easy to draw turtles, guys. Everybody come over and watch me do it. It's the same with Spider-Man. You know, once you hack out how the webs work on Spider-Man's face, all of a sudden you know how to draw Spider-Man.
That's like the secret that like the artist always figures out versus the person who doesn't know, because I think you do it repetitively and you find the little shortcut, but then you master it, and that's what puts you leaps and bounds against some random person trying to draw. So were your parents were they also artistic? Were they artists themselves? Your mom helping you?
No, actually. My aunt is a fantastic artist. And I think I got a lot of introduction to stuff through her. But no, neither of my parents are artists. My mother's a fantastic singer, though. She's artistic in a different way.
And she can draw the fuck out of a knee.
Yeah. She. Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. What were your turtles that you were drawing? Was it the cartoon? Was it comics?
Oh, definitely the cartoon. Yeah, I was of the generation that came to the Turtles through the cartoon, and then honestly the movie, the first Turtles movie in 1990, which is
that movie was life-changing.
Still holds up, man. My girlfriend and I
had the bed sheets.
Yeah, I think I did too. I actually I remember my dad and I went to the hardware store, and they had those like borders that you can run around the top of a room.
Yeah.
They had Ninja Turtles borders, and I bugged him into getting them for me. And they sat in the basement until my parents moved out of their house about 10 years ago. So I never made it onto the wall.
Man.
Well, that was the beginning of your collecting.
Yeah. But I was just going to say that my girlfriend and I got to see the Turtles movie, the original one, in the theater last year, which was awesome because I don't think I had seen it in a theater since probably it came out in 1990.
Yeah, was it like a 35th anniversary kind of thing?
No, it was just one of the theaters up by where I live in Boston. It's a repertory theater, so they do a lot of prints of a lot of different stuff, and that they were doing a Jim Henson series over the summer.
Wow!
And so they did Dark Crystal and Labyrinth and Ninja Turtles at the Brattle Theater in Cambridge. Fantastic movie theater.
That's awesome. Yeah, I want to say maybe it was the 30th anniversary. There's a summer series that before it ran. There was an ArcLight by us, and it was whatever the first reboot of the live action Turtles came out, where the Turtles are all CGI, quote unquote, live action, with Megan Fox and who's the director, big explodey guy.
Yeah.
It was the first Michael Bay Turtles movie, and the theater was genius. So the week that movie came out, they were showing the original Turtles movie. Like they decided, like, hey, why not? And so we bought tickets to the original Turtles movie, being like, yeah, it's like the new one. And we showed up, and they were serving pizza. Like you got a free slice of pizza as you walked in. So we made sure to wait until the Turtles ate their pizza in the movie until we ate ours. But you're right, man. I would say that's like a pretty perfect movie.
Yeah, and it was what was it? It was like the highest grossing independent film for a long time, I think, because it was independently produced.
And those costumes still look better than any of the CGI did.
Yeah.
Especially because it's working mouths.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have read or heard of the behind the scenes stuff with those things, but it sounds like they were a horror to work with, but the results were great.
Really early on with Instagram, I remember seeing the viral photo of the Turtles without their masks on. So it's just like 4 dudes, and they're literally hunched over, sweating.
Yeah,
just red faced.
Yes. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep.
What was your Batman that you? I mean, obviously, I think we know from your podcast, but what's the Batman you fell in love with?
Well, I think I grew up on Batman 66. That was probably the first thing I was watching, but I don't think things really solidified until Batman 89, the Tim Burton one, which is still the high water mark for me. Even I'm wise enough to know that it's not a perfect movie, but it's a perfect movie to me. So
listen, Clay, you're amongst. Listen.
Well, look behind Tom there, and you can see where his allegiances lie.
Look at this. Look at this stupid room that I have here. But
excellent. It's funny. NECA, when they came out with, I feel like a lot of these companies that are catering to people like us are kind of fulfilling childhood dreams of everybody who now has the money to spend on this stuff, because like I played video games. I was a NES guy and a Sega Genesis kid, and I had a N64, but I wasn't super into N64. And then I didn't have another console system until I just got a PS4 maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And the thing that brought me back is when I was a kid, you're looking at the box art for all these games, and then you rent the game and you bring the game home, and it doesn't match the box art, to put it kindly. But now the games match the box art. If you bring a Batman game home or buy a Batman game, you get to play as Batman in the most convincing way possible. Or the Ghostbusters game, you get to play. The only Ghostbusters game I knew was the NES Ghostbusters game, which is trash, to put it lightly. But the one that came out about 10 or so years ago was like, I'd been waiting for that game my whole life. And so NECA, when they finally put out a 6 or 7 inch Michael Keaton Batman figure, my head just exploded, because I'd been wanting a figure like that since I was 5 years old.
Yeah. And it's an absolutely amazing figure.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
How'd you get your hands on that one? Because it was like it was a weird eBay Toys R Us exclusive. You had to either get it off their eBay or you had to go into a Toys R Us. And then even then, they were putting like crazy limits on it, at least around me. How did you get your hands on that guy?
I got it at Toys R Us. It was
R.I.P.
I saw that it was a Toys R Us exclusive, and I saw that it came. It either came with, or you had to purchase the movie on Blu-ray, and I was like, oh God, I guess I have to buy Batman again. God forbid. But of course, I was more than happy to do that. So I got Batman on Blu-ray, which I didn't have at that point, and I also got the figure. So it was a win-win for me.
Yeah, I went around to probably 4 or 5 different Toys R Us at the time, and I stocked. Dude, I don't remember. I remember having a stack of them, and I sent them all to these guys. Like,
yeah. I was just gonna say, you got mine.
Yeah, I didn't keep them. I wasn't a dick to keep it for myself. I would have gladly, but there's about 8 dudes that I was buying them for. So it was a tough one to get, man.
Yeah, I think I was kind of lucky, because with that stuff, I feel like it's kind of a crapshoot. What places around you may or may not have them. Like a lot of stuff that I look for now, the places around me tend not to have. And every now and then I'll walk in and boom, something will be on the shelf at Target or something. But yeah, I grabbed that one. And the other one I was happy to get when I could was Hot Wheels did a 1/18 size of the Keaton Batmobile die-cast, which is, again, something I'd wanted for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Did you get the NECA NES variant as well?
No, I held out, because I saw that one and I was like, I could go for this, but this isn't exactly what I want. And I feel like if they're doing this version, they're going to do the other version eventually. Yeah. So I held out for the original costume.
Yeah, I think you make good points about NECA and how they're putting out things exactly for our very specific demographic and time frame. The guy who runs it, Randy, is pretty much like us, around the same age. And I think he's gotten his company to a point where, like, now he can just make whatever he wants, and so he's doing exactly that. Like, so
that's awesome. Yeah.
All his favorite horror movies, all his favorite, superhero movies. He did April from. These guys are killing themselves over trying to get April from Ninja Turtles.
Sure.
The movie version. There's like 2 of them out, right? Legends.
That's right.
And he's all.
I got both of them.
Speaking about the knees, Clay. Big to do in the NECA community about April's knees, apparently.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Ask this guy.
Yeah,
I'll tell you.
They were pretty horrible on the first version, but what are you gonna do?
See, they should have got Clay's mom to work on these knees.
I know. Yeah.
and we can hook that up now too, because one of our guys, he's not on tonight, but one of our guys works at NECA.
Well, there you go.
So maybe that's an inroad.
Well, she's retired now, so I'm sure she would love to do some concept design for action figure knees.
How does
corner of the market?
How does Returns hold up? For obviously, 89's your first, but like as Returns came out, what were your thoughts on that one?
I have very clear recollection of going to see it on my birthday, because it came out the week of my birthday, I think.
Nice.
And it was one where I have kind of gone back and forth on it, where I went from, as a kid, I liked it, but not as much as the first one. And then I kind of took the hip approach, where it's like, well, yeah, Batman's great, but Batman Returns, that's the weird one. That's the strange one. And then I've come back around and I'm like, no, that one's pretty great. It's kind of, it's less of a comic book Batman movie and more of a pure Tim Burton Batman movie, which I'm very happy to see. Like, I'm one of the people who now, at the time I thought it was silly and didn't want to see it, but now, especially after the documentary, I wish they had made that Nicolas Cage Superman movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Because I just want to see what that would have been like. It sounded batshit crazy, which is now makes me really wish that I had made it.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those suits, like the Superman suit with the lights in it.
Right. Yeah, that stuff is so fascinating to me too, because it's like you can tell they're really pushing the limits of what they can do before CGI really exists in the way that it does now. Because all of that stuff they're doing, they're trying to do what they can with the limits of the technology of the time. And so you end up with these weird sort of like translucent marbleized painted light up suits and shit that probably would have not looked fantastic, or maybe they would have. I don't know, who knows. Movie magic always makes that stuff look good.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would have loved to have seen a timeline or an alternate universe where we get that movie, and who cares what other people would have thought. I probably would be watching it repeatedly. So
did you hear the rumor that Nicolas Cage might be in Flash as Superman?
I have not heard that, and I wish you hadn't told me, because now if it doesn't happen, I'm sorry. Yeah, I haven't seen anybody else really. I saw one thing, and they pointed to an interview that he did, one of those like variety interviews where they take questions from the internet or something. And I think the question was, will we ever get to see you in a movie as Superman, or a Superman's movie starring you as Superman? And he kind of like hesitated, and he said something like, well, how do you define star, or something like that, where it was like a definite, like, kind of didn't want to say no, didn't want to say yes. So maybe he was just messing with people, but of course everybody was like, well, that means only one thing. So I don't know what animated movie, but he voiced Superman recently.
Did he really?
Yeah, he did the voice acting for, and it was a very small role. Like, I don't even think Superman was like even a main character in it. I think it might be like a Super Pets, like, recent short.
Sure.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
But something to where it was just kind of like a nod, and he had fun doing it because, I'm sure he would have, it's just kind of something that he can close a chapter on or whatever. But if what you're saying is true, man, that would be amazing.
Yeah, who knows? Anything is possible these days in a way that makes my 13-year-old self just not understand how anything works anymore. But I'm glad that they're doing it. So.
And then when the animated series came out, how did you? Obviously, you got a whole podcast on it, but how was young Clay receiving that one?
Oh, that was probably the next step in my comic book evolution, was the cartoons, because you had Batman the Animated Series, X-Men, and Spider-Man all on around the same time, and so that really kind of crystallized those things for me. And Batman the Animated Series was probably my favorite. Honestly, if I'm being completely honest, I think I'm more of a Batman guy now than I was when I was a kid. I think I was more of an X-Men person when I was a kid, so I think I probably preferred the X-Men show. But yeah, I watched them all equally and was equally as devastated when I came down one Saturday and they just weren't on anymore.
Let's shift gears. I want to go back. So we got through your early days of illustration. Where did that lead you to? Like, did you end up going the road of art school or anything like that?
I did, yes. So I actually started off as more of a painter, because I never really I had done like drawing comics kind of in my notebooks and stuff as a kid, but I never, and I had the prerequisite copy of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way that I never actually read cover to cover, unfortunately. But I never really took art lessons until around the 8th grade, and my art teacher was a great painter. He was a great illustrator, and so I had never painted before, and so that was the route I ended up going. And that was right around the time Kingdom Come and Marvels came out, and so I had been, through the trading cards, I had locked on to Joe Jusko, and I was like, okay, this is something I've never seen before. Realistic painted comic books. This is fantastic. And then Alex Ross comes around, and he kind of takes it a step further. And so I was really into that stuff. And so when I was learning how to paint, I was copying Alex Ross paintings. I copied the Marvel's cover with Spider-Man on the window with the goblin flying by the office building. And so I did that all through high school. And then I went to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. And my intention was always to do comics. I never really had much of an interest in doing like magazine illustration or anything like that. It was always sequential art for me. It was either going to be comics or storyboards or some combination of the two. And so my school didn't have the biggest comics program. We had a great teacher. His name's Floyd Hughes. He's still there. Fantastic teacher. He worked for Marvel in the early 90s, I think. He did a bunch of Vengeance stories on Marvel Comics Presents. And he worked for MTV for a while. He did the storyboards for Highlander, which Highlander is one of my favorite movies, and he's very bitter about it. I won't go into why, but he did storyboards for Hellraiser. I have photocopies of the storyboards he did for it. Yeah.
Does he still have them?
I have them. I mean, I don't have the originals, but he gave me photocopies, which I still have.
Whoa.
Yeah, he storyboarded the Frank coming back out of the floor sequence, which is great. But yeah, it wasn't a big sequential art school at the time. I'm not sure if it is now, but so I was still doing mostly illustration. But when it came to my senior year, my final senior project was I did an 8-page story. It was the first Dead Meat story I ever did, which I eventually sold to Heavy Metal. It was the first thing I ever had published.
That's awesome. Look, that was like, you were pretty young then too.
Yeah, 2021, around then.
Whoa. And having something sold to Heavy Metal, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was a really great. I'll tell you, coming out of art school, really gave me an unrealistic impression of what freelance art was going to be like. Because so right after college, so my teacher Floyd suggested I did this 8-page story. He said you should try and get this in Heavy Metal, because he had done. He's from England. He's from London. He actually grew up and hung out with Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman and all those guys. Man. And he was like, you should try to sell this to Heavy Metal. And so I went to the first. I can't remember. I think it was the first one. The first big New York Comic-Con at the Javits Center, which was hilarious because they oversold it. And so we went, my buddy Doug Cowan and I, good friend of mine, fantastic painter. He does Star Wars and stuff that's amazing. We went down to the show, and on the second day, and they said, "Oh, we can't let you in. We oversold the show, but put your name down here and we'll give you free passes for next year." We said, "Okay, that's great." We wrote our names in the thing, and then we basically walked down the back and down the stairs and just went in anyway. There you go. And so I went over to the Heavy Metal table, and Kevin Eastman was there, because Kevin Eastman was running Heavy Metal at the time. And I showed him the story. I showed him my portfolio, and I showed him the story, and he just kind of flips through it and he goes, "Yeah, I'll publish this."
Whoa. Okay. So you're like, okay, well, this is how it goes. Maybe I'll sell to Marvel next.
Yeah. And so I sent it to them, and there was a bit of a connection error where I had sent it, but they didn't get it. So I ended up having to send it again. Long story, but it ended up going in the magazine. And I did another story for them a couple years later, another Dead Meat story. And so, yeah, my first attempt at getting something sold went very well. And after that, I was back at home looking for freelance art jobs. And so this was like 2006 after I graduated, because I was going out to San Diego that year. And I was on Craigslist, and I was just looking at art jobs on Craigslist, and I saw one that said, "Local band needs artwork for tour video." I'm like, all right, sure. I answered this ad. I talked to the guy. We're kind of on the same page, like stylistically. He's looking for this kind of thing that I'm into. And he goes, oh yeah, hold on. Let me send you the artwork for the tour of this band. And I open the file and my whole screen is filled up with Aerosmith and Motley Crue, Root of All Evil Tour 2006. And I was
Shut the fuck up,
yeah,
dude.
and so I ended up doing a what turned into a 2-minute, or it's probably less than that. It's probably like a minute animated video that played on Aerosmith's tour that year in between the end of the set and the encore.
Wow.
Yeah, and then after that, though, I was riding high off of that, and then it was basically couldn't get a job for about 10 years. So it was ups and downs.
And to further that arc, so you go to art school, you have this great professor that leads you to great things, and then you sell stories to heavy metal, and then you work for Aerosmith, and then you stumble into this apprenticeship program by some guy named Sean Murphy.
Yes.
And everything just, I presume, goes to hell from there.
What a quack.
Well,
Bloody hell.
There's about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's about 7 years in between those two things that you're talking about. But yes. So what had happened was I got out of school and I was doing freelance art, and I hated it, basically. It was constantly scrounging for jobs, trying to make contacts, trying to get a couple $100 here and there to do an illustration or a storyboards or something for a very, very, very low budget movie or whatever. And none of this was comics. And I was doing sample pages. I would take sample pages to different conventions. I had a really great meeting with Mark Schiarello one year. And I talked to numerous people trying to get better, but I wasn't getting any work doing comics. And I remember walking around New York Comic Con, probably 2008-ish. Probably about 2008. And I was kind of looking around at everybody who had these tables set up, and I'm walking the floor, and I got to, trying to desperately get someone to talk to me to maybe give me a job. And I'm seeing all these people self-publishing books and doing all this stuff. And I just kind of had this moment where I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll just do it myself. And I decided to put all my focus on making my own book, which was Dead Meat, which served two purposes to me. It was a way to get myself to do work that I could actually put out there, which it was online. I did it as a weekly web thing, and then I would collect them into issues and trades that I would sell at conventions, which familiarized me with printing and putting a book together, and how anytime you do that, you make about 1,700 PDFs before you send the wrong one off to the printer.
Fuck.
But on top of that, I looked at it as an excuse to just get better and work on stuff. And so I knew part of my goal of doing that book was to see how my style changed between when I started and when I ended it. And I did that probably for about 5 years. And I got to a point where it's crazy how this stuff, like it sounds like somebody wrote this, but I got to a point where I was talking to my girlfriend, and I said, I feel like I've got the tools. I feel like I'm in a pretty good place with my ability. I just wish I would love it if I could work with a professional for like a month who could really focus me down and to show me how to really what areas I need to work on. And I swear to God, a month later, Sean's thing popped up. And Sean was one of my favorite artists at the time. I think he was not new, but he was newer. And I had gravitated toward his style because he had kind of the same influence as I did. And it was just like, there couldn't have been a bigger sign for me for something I had to do. And so, yeah, I applied to Sean's apprenticeship. I got in, and I worked with him for 2 weeks. And we've been good friends ever since.
Dude, do you play the lottery?
No, I test my luck on scratch tickets, but it's never very successful there, unfortunately.
It's interesting that you seem to be someone that once you start, like, it sounds like those 7 years you were doing the grinding out kind of, the freelance kind of thing. But it seems that any time that you've like just taken the reins and like gone for something, like it just happens. Dude, like for example, choosing to say fuck it and just walk into the jobbing center, like, you know what I mean? Like, you could have just passively said, "Oh, we can't get in." Your life is completely different, you know?
Right.
But you guys were ballsy enough to say fuck it, and you go in there, you take your thing, you give it to Eastman, he looks at it, and it's like, dude, think of that. Like, you a breeze pushed you into the jobbing center, and then you got Dead Meat published in heavy metal, which is boom right there. Like, that's a nice thing to have on your resume, you know? And then so it's super interesting. I don't know if there's much coincidence more so than manifesting going on there on your part.
You know, I have never thought about it that way, because I have kind of seen it from the other side of that equation, where I feel like I think maybe one of the reasons that I gravitated towards World War I for Bloody Hell is because I feel like I can connect to attrition quite well, where I can stick it out for the long game. You know, if I knew when I started doing Dead Meat, I knew that this was not going. I knew I was making a conscious decision to change what I was doing, and I was not going to be making money off of this right away. And it was really more for the long game than anything else. And knowing that and understanding that, I can play that game. And you know, it the same thing goes with when I was when it was like around 2010, I think. I was going to do this was in the early days of Kickstarter. I was going to do a Kickstarter for Bloody Hell to do a collection of, Dead Meat. And I was going to do a collection of Dead Meat, like, you know, a hardcover, blah, 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 blah. And I had, at the time, no idea the ins and outs of Kickstarter. And as I started diving into this and looking stuff up and researching about how to do this the right way, I realized I was like, I am not ready to do this. I don't have the backing of people who I can, you know, reach out to make this happen. I also, you know, I'm looking at the way these numbers shake out, and it's like, this is very difficult to come out of this ahead. And I talked to some very successful people who had successful Kickstarters, and I was like, hey, how did you not end up in the hole doing this? And they're like, oh no, we did. We lost money. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I can't afford to do that. And so that was always in the back of my mind as something I wanted to do. And it stayed there for about 10 years until I did Bloody Hell, which was like, all right, I've got the thing. I've got enough experience now where I feel like I can do this successfully. I've been watching how Kickstarter works for 10 years to see what goes well, what doesn't go well, what the best way to handle certain things are. And I kind of formulated a long-term plan that was always kind of gestating until I decided to launch this, and it ended up working out very well for me.
Oh,
and so yeah, it might seem like divine wind pushing me in the right direction, but it usually comes after a long road of grinding it out, as you'd say, which I don't have any bitterness about, because you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, well deserved. I think your work, the way that how successful Bloody Hell has been as a project is kind of proof in itself. And I mean, like, we're just gonna flip through some of the art real quick on that, and it's just an awesome idea, awesome concept. So you were talking a little bit about, well, can you, for the listeners and for people who are watching who might not have backed the program, or who might not have backed the project, who don't know what it is, can you give us like a quick little pitch on for them?
Sure. Bloody Hell it's about 5 mystically powered Vikings who've been imprisoned for 1,000 years, and they're set loose when their prison is destroyed by an artillery shell from World War I. And so they get released all juiced up on magic and invincible, and they start wreaking havoc during World War I. And see, so great example of what I'm talking about. That pitch that I just gave you, I gave to everybody who stopped at my convention table for about 5 years. And so it got whittled down to a succinct 2 sentences that I can kind of get across the idea. I think hopefully effectively.
Yeah, nailed it. And then so just looking at the art on this, the style, why did you choose World War One and a crossover of that with like Viking lore? Amazing concept, amazing visually too. So what was it? How did that bleed into this project?
Well, the project came about when I was a good friend of mine, Dan Edelman, and I were just kind of talking about, we were just kicking around ideas, and we were kind of like, what's the most heavy metal thing you can think of? And we were kind of like, oh, well, Vikings in World War II. And at a certain point, I was like, yes, but I feel like World War II is really overdone at this point. And I've always found World War One a little bit more interesting because it's a lot more. It completely changed the course of world history in a very sharp way, and like the casualty count was absolutely astronomical. But nobody really talks about it that much anymore. It's World War II, and then they don't go back further than that. And I've always kind of wondered why that is. And to me, it was always because World War II has a villain, right? You've got a bad guy built into the idea, if you will. Whereas World War I is a lot more messy, and it's a lot more complicated politically, and the actual fighting echoes that by just having years upon years of stalemate where people are just shooting at each other across a field of mud and killing each other in the most inhumane ways you could possibly think of. Because it was wild to me that World War I, they started on horses and they ended with tanks. So you can see the big swing of technology, war machine technology. And I think as I really got into this, the thing that stood out to me was it interested me to use the Vikings as a sort of a reflection of World War I, because the Vikings come from a culture that values battle and honor and dying in battle as the greatest honor. And to take those characters and put them into a situation where it's very difficult to look around and see anything honorable about the way people are dying in this war. I thought that created a really interesting conflict and juxtaposition. And the cover that you showed there, that was the first drawing that I ever did of the concept, because I wanted to see if the imagery worked together. And it's kind of like a proof of concept drawing. And that was the first drawing I did, and it made it all the way to the finished book.
Awesome imagery, because you got the soldiers in the foreground, and then you have the massive Viking in the background, and the way that he's in the back is just like making him, he's already massive, but then when you look at the distance, it's like, Jesus, he's massive.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a bit of false advertising, because they never get that big in the actual book. But
it's a striking image. Yeah.
You got to hook them somehow.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then did you design the logo art too?
No. A good friend of mine, Joe Delegata, designed that. He's also a fantastic comic artist. I highly recommend looking him up. He's got really, really great style, and he's a very clean and precise artist, and he does all of his own hand lettering when he can, still on the page. And so I knew he would have the design sense that I wanted, because the image is so it's so busy, and there's lots of streaks and scratches and all kinds of crap going on. So for a logo, I wanted something really kind of simple and clean to kind of offset that a bit. And I think he nailed it. It came out great.
And I remember in the Kickstarter updates, there was a photo at one point of, was it an axe or something? You had a Bloody Hel axe or something like that made up in one of the photos.
Yes.
That was very cool.
Yeah, I was looking for something special to do as a high level reward for Kickstarter, but it was very disappointing when I read the terms and conditions and said you could not give weapons as a Kickstarter reward. And so I had bought this axe off of eBay, and I was going to my original plan was to put it up as a reward, and I would do a sketch on the blade and whatnot. But I couldn't do that, and so I worked it into the video as kind of a gag. And then yeah, who cares? One of my friends ended up buying it.
It's funny how they have that. That means something bad happened for them to have to put it in the terms.
I mean, I imagine when they were sitting around having their meeting about what they should and shouldn't allow, that was probably very high on the list of things that they very quickly decided not to allow.
It's kind of like he's in the news a lot right now. Elon Musk, when he first started selling Teslas, or at some point with one of the versions of them, he included a flamethrower with them.
Yeah.
And
of course he did.
What he did was he came out and said, "Do not buy this flamethrower, please. It's a bad idea. Don't do it." And he made 20,000 of them, and they all sold out.
Yeah, and didn't they have to call it not a flamethrower? Like they literally called it not a flamethrower.
Not a flame. Yeah, that's what it's called. Yeah.
There's I forget the name of the place, so I can't get them in trouble. But there's a restaurant near me that will basically deliver you pot with your order, and you are not paying for that though. It's basically you are tipping, or I think I can't remember how they refer to it, but you're giving an X amount of dollar tip, and they give you something in return that is not something you're buying.
That is amazing.
You're not buying it.
What kind of food do they have?
I honestly don't remember. I've never not for that reason. I've never
not about the food.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit?
Yeah. He donates the food.
Well, let's show this one real quick because I think people. It's another cool one, right?
Yeah, I called in a pretty big favor on that one.
Yeah, that was the tier that I got with Sean's dust jacket.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. It was unbelievable of him to do that for me. You know, he just knocked it out of the park, and we had Simon Goff do the colors for it, which are fantastic. And he actually gave me the idea to do the dust jacket, because one of the things that I was trying to figure out when I was working out my Kickstarter stuff was how to get the maximum amount of stuff in the smallest package possible, basically. And so you're not sending a bunch of different size packages, and if you can get everything in the package with the book, that's really beneficial. And so I wanted to offer a print, like a good sized print, but I didn't want to have to send a bunch of gigantic packages out with these 11 by 17 prints. Yeah. And Sean suggested doing a dust jacket, and I was like, man, that is a fucking brilliant idea, because it's a print, but you just wrap it around the book, and it just slips right in there. You don't need to get any new different shipping material at all. It doesn't cost you anymore, because it's 1/10 of an ounce or whatever it is. And it was it did really, really well too. It was a great reward tier for me.
Did he show you progress on it, or did he show it to you once it was done?
He pretty much just showed it to me when it was done. I think he might have given me like 1 or 2 shots when he was doing the boat. And then I think he had a couple questions about the design of the character, and I was like, listen, just do whatever you want. I'm not gonna argue with whatever you do.
Yeah. So what was your reaction when you saw the finished piece?
Well, I was a little bit upset, because I had planned to offer it as the highest reward tier, the original art, and once I saw it, I really second guessed that plan, because I would much rather have kept it for myself. But I didn't. I put it up, and it went very quickly, as you can assume.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's bittersweet, but yeah, it's cool that you at least get that on your book overall.
Yeah, I did, before I sent it off, I made a high quality print of the original art for myself, so I've got something pretty close.
Yeah,
and now people can still purchase copies of Bloody Hel.
Oh yeah, definitely. You can. So the publisher who put it out for me, that was another part of the Kickstarter that I kind of had to figure out a way to do it that I was happy with, because I I know enough about myself to know that I don't want to deal with a printer, and I don't want to have to deal with shipping books overseas, and I don't want to have to deal with having 1,000 books in my basement or something. And so, and also self-publishing like that, you don't really have distribution or anything. You're basically doing, I would have been doing the same thing I was doing before, which is pounding the pavement, just trying to get these books into however many people's hands I could. And then I met Tyler Chin Tanner from A Wave Blue World, who's this really great publisher. They're a smaller publisher, but they put out fantastic books. They did Toby Cypress's art book a few years ago. That's really, really great. And I was talking to him at a smaller show in New York, and he's like, if you want to put this out, we'll publish it. And the talking over with him about how we were going to handle this stuff, it was the perfect deal for me, because they kind of ended up being the leg of the thing that I kind of didn't want to deal with. Like they're an established publishing company that has actual distribution in bookstores. They've got great relationships with their printers, and they can do things right, and they can do it well. They designed the book, like the book design is all them. They put together a fantastic product. And so I hooked up with them, and they published it for me. And yeah, you can get it at their website, which is I think it's awbw.com, but if you look up A Wave Blue World, it'll pop up there.
Very awesome. I think
they also just published I did a book a few years ago with a record company that was called Poser. It's a horror punk rock slasher horror book, and written by Matt Miner. And Waxwork Comics, who's the company that put the book out at the time, never collected it as a trade. And Matt and I got the rights back to it late summer last year. And we both really wanted to trade. And Matt knows Tyler as well. And so we reached out to him, and we were like, hey, this is all completely done. Would you be interested in publishing it? And he said, yeah, let's do it. And so that's out from them now too. It's you can get Bloody Hel and Poser from A Wave Blue World, awbw.com.
That's awesome. And I was able to get these screenshots digitally from I had the physical copies, but I'm like, man, I don't want to just take pictures on my phone. So I actually bought it on what is it, Amazon, I think, or was it, I forget what it was. I think it's Comixology. So to hold me over.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you,
man. So it's well, there's also this coming as well.
Yes, eventually.
That is
yes.
Such the first time I read the book and got to that at the end, I thought, well, that's perfect. Like, how the name couldn't be any more perfect.
Well, funny story about that. I had never intended to do a sequel to this book. I as I said before, World War II, a little bit played out as far as stories go, especially when you're involving magic and stuff. Like, what ground can you lay that Hellboy and other people before you haven't already done? And so I was typing in my phone to a friend of mine, and I wrote Bloody Hel, and my phone auto-corrected it to Bloody Hel. And I just went, oh, that's too good of a title not to use. And so that was the genesis of the sequel that I will do eventually. I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to get to it, but it is in the works to do it at some point.
And you mentioned that you feel the time period is already been done, but I think you sort of get grandfathered in because you've already done World War I. So, well, you're just moving to the next conflict to continue as another chapter of your own story.
Yeah, my dad was joking around. He's like, well, then you got to figure out a clever title for Korea in Vietnam. And I was like, all right, I don't know if it's going to work that far. But, I had been thinking about that because, I didn't want to just do a generic World War II and magic story. And so what I can tell you about it is that it will be a Christmas story. It takes place at Christmas, and it will involve Belgian resistance fighters during World War II. But that's all I'll say about it right now.
Interesting. Very Pinteresting. Okay, cool.
Now, and do you assume that this is something you would do yourself again, do a crowdfund, or
most likely? Yeah, I really like I mean, I've only done it once, so the next one I do might be a complete failure. I don't know, but I like the option of the crowdfunding model, especially if I have a partner like a Wave Blue World who I can work with to put out a really great book, because it allows me to. You don't have to wait for somebody to give you the green light to do something. You can, if you can put it together yourself and you can put it in front of people and have people go, yeah, I'd like to read that. Then at that point, all you got to do is make it,
And I feel like you can only go up. Like you were obviously successful with Bloody Hel, just doing this on your own, and now your name has grown not only from that, but from one of the other irons you have in the fire right now, is your upcoming Red Hood 2 issues. Right, we see it here as part of Sean Murphy's Batman Beyond the White Knight.
Yes, yeah.
And I didn't want to make that the focus of tonight. I wanted to talk about Bloody Hel and your stuff, your story.
But, yeah, bring me onto a Batman-centric podcast to talk about World War I. Sure.
Exactly. But
where do you want to start? It started in August.
But I guess we would be remiss if we didn't touch on this a little bit. Everyone knows it's coming now. Is there anything you do want to say about it?
I do want to say I am more than honored to be a part of the White Knight universe with Sean. I've been working with him kind of in the background since the first volume of White Knight, and while it was never something that I expected to happen, I kind of was like, it would be great if eventually I could do something in the world. And so when he brought this to me and he offered me the job to do it, I said, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to do it.
Yeah, Sean's been coming on with us since the first White Knight volume and has always credited you as being someone who is helping him do that.
Yeah, that he's been really great about it. For various reasons, he couldn't do it officially, so he's been really great about saying it anywhere off the official record that he can to put me over pretty strong, which is fantastic. It's not something that he needs to do because it's his baby, it's his brainchild and all that kind of stuff. I'm just here to help. But getting a chance to work with Red Hood, which is a character that I hadn't been super familiar with before this. I obviously I knew Jason Todd and I had read Hush and stuff. And I had seen the Under the Red Hood cartoon, but I didn't have a huge history with him. And so it gave me an excuse to go out and read some Red Hood comics that I really enjoyed and helped me get a good handle on him as a character.
What would you say are some things after learning a little bit more about him that makes you excited about exploring him?
He's kind of an asshole, which I like. They've done a great job at making each one of the Robins very unique in their characters and their temperaments. So, Dick is obviously kind of the older brother, and Damien Wayne is probably one of my favorite characters to have been created in the last 15 years or however long it's been.
He's a different flavor of asshole than Jason.
Yeah, man. Flipping when they put Dick Grayson as Batman and gave him a Robin and just flipped the whole dynamic where Batman was the fun-loving, goofy kind of guy and Robin was the dark, brooding asshole. Brilliant idea. And my Robin was always Tim. I grew up through Nightfall and all the 90s, so I was much more familiar with Tim than anybody else. And the rest of the Robins are all kind of such like a close, tight-knit group that Jason appealed to me as being the black sheep of that group. And I reading the book that I really liked was Red Hood and the Outlaws, the rebirth version of it with Bizarro and I can't remember who the other one was.
Starfire, was it?
No, it was an Amazon with the red hair and the axe. I can't remember what her name is. I really like that book a lot. And he kind of came across as this interesting middle child, which I found very interesting. And he's got the backstory as being killed by the Joker, which is unique. It's funny, around that time, so before we had decided to do Red Hood, I had pitched Sean a Catwoman series because Catwoman was the only character from the main line that he had never touched on in White Knight. And so I figured, well, why not find a character like that I could put my stamp on? And one of the characters that I wanted to use in that series was Stephanie Brown, because as I was kind of doing Robin research, I came across Stephanie Brown, who was a character I didn't really know that much about. And when I read her story, I found her very fascinating as someone who started off as a supporting character for Tim Drake and who ended up succeeding him as Robin, much to the constant naysaying of Bruce, where he did not want her to do this. He did not want her to do this. And then finally she worked her way in there. And then she ends up getting killed in a way very different from the way that Jason gets killed. And I also found her interesting because she kind of was an afterthought with a lot of the other kind of restructuring and stuff. Like they had her be Batgirl for a while, obviously, in that great Batgirl series. But after they rebooted everything, she kind of disappeared. And so that's another character I'd love to write. But yeah, Jason is a lot of fun. Sean and I were we were trying to find a way to crack this, because the way that Sean establishes him in his book is different, to say the least.
Yeah.
And he hasn't really been a part of the story. He's kind of been like a looming presence, but he had never established him as a character. And even in Curse of the White Knight, he only shows up for like a panel or a page or something at the end. And so we hadn't really figured out what this guy was going to be. And when Sean pitched me the idea of this book, which is he wanted to do sort of a story about Jason taking on his own apprentice reluctantly, and kind of learning a bit about kind of assuaging the chip on the Batman sized chip he has on his shoulder by actually being in Bruce's shoes, having to teach another person how to do this. And I was trying to figure out a way to drop into that made sense to me. And then we were talking about it. I forget. I think we were out to dinner or something. And I forget which one of us said it, but we were like, he's Johnny Lawrence from Cobra Kai. And as soon as we said that, it clicked in my head and I was like, all right, I know how to do this now.
Genius.
Yeah, that's a very cool take on him. As soon as Sean had mentioned that, but this is months ago now, but yeah, as soon as I had just finished, I think, binging what was out at that point of Cobra Kai, and when he said we're gonna do him like Johnny Lawrence and Cobra Kai, like, oh, that's awesome. So like sort of almost like a washed up deadbeat, but still trying to find his way to do something that matters. And
yeah, it's going to be interesting because the Jason that is in our book is how do I say this without spoiling anything? It's a younger Jason than he has introduced up to this point.
Yeah.
And so we have the Jason that exists in Beyond the White Knight and in what he saw of him in Harley Quinn and all that kind of stuff, is an older, kind of wiser Jason. And so we kind of set most of the story that we did at a point in his history where he's still really, really rough around the edges and pretty much at bottom. He's hit bottom basically. And so that gave us a little bit more latitude to do something more Cobra Kai-esque with him as a character.
And you get to introduce now your own, whether she's official or not, your own Robin that Jason has taken under his wing.
Yeah, as far as she's concerned, she's official, but I don't think anybody else thinks that she's official.
Yeah,
it's definitely not Jason. I can tell you that much. Yeah, her name's Gan, and she's a kid from Gotham City who lives in a part of town where Batman and Robin and Nightwing don't seem to get there as much as she wishes that they did. So she's kind of she's a huge Batman fan, and she's kind of taking it upon herself to do what she can to keep her neighborhood safe. And when she meets Jason, who was at one time a Robin, she kind of fangirls out a bit and wants to learn as much as she can from him, for better or worse. And
Sean described her as a bigger woman, like just built and kind of a bruiser.
Yeah, that was one of the things I said to him when we started talking about this. Was I was like, I would like to do a different kind of character than just another Robin who is just the same skill set in a different design suit. And I thought it would be really interesting, and it would make it difficult for Jason as a teacher if he's got this I actually don't know what his fighting background is. I assume it's just all the same stuff Dick knows how to do, because it was kind of a carbon copy when they invented him. But he's got the classic superhero skill set where he's acrobatic, he can swing from high rooftops and stuff, and he's very quick and he's very agile. And I thought it would be really interesting to pair him with someone who didn't have that skill set, who had a different body type, who couldn't do the things that he was trying to teach her how to do. And so it would force him to try to change his teaching style and look at things a little bit differently than the way he thinks that they should go. And originally Gan was going to be a Pacific Islander, I think. And so I said, oh, that's great. Let's make her a rugby player, because I was thinking about New Zealand. I was thinking about the New Zealand All Black rugby team. And I was like, that would be a great, strong kind of low center of gravity kind of body type, where she can do some damage, but just not in the same way that Jason does, Yeah.
But now I believe she is Mongolian.
Yes. Influenced by a band called The Who that Sean has been listening to quite a bit.
He's
very excited about it.
He sent me a link to their Spotify, and I did get hooked on them.
Yeah, he was really excited about that band.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're sort of like a hard rock kind of band. They use a lot of Mongolian instruments, and there's a lot of throat singing.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunate name choice, if you'd ask me, though, because they may as well have called themselves the Beatles.
Yeah, but just spelled it different.
Right. Yeah.
But I get some funny looks if I play them in the comic shop sometimes.
Oh, yes.
And someone will come in and go, "What's this?" And I'll go, "The Who." Like, what? Yeah. No, I don't think it is. Okay.
Well, Pete Townsend he's a very artistic person. He has a new different angle he wants to go down.
Got into throat singing.
Eclectic.
Yes.
Speaking of music, I was catching up on the BatAss podcast. Did you guys time it to where it would just roll around where you'd cover Beyond in this time? I mean, you're covering Beyond now on the podcast. You got the Batman Beyond White Knight book coming out. Like, it's so perfect the way it kind of synchronized that way.
No, it was not. I guess it was maybe a little bit, but it wasn't something that either of us had planned on. Okay, well, your book comes out here. We'll make sure we get the first episode out at this point. It just kind of, we had finished up the animated series, and we were taking a break, and we had done Mystery of the Batwoman and a couple of the Superman World's Finest episodes with Batman. And, I was kind of busy with other stuff. He was busy. I knew he was doing the book. And then once we started recording again, I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I mean, your book is going to come out in a couple weeks anyway, so this is gonna work out perfectly. So it was a little bit kind of, I had it in the back of my mind, but it wasn't something that I was planning to do. But I'm happy that we did, because it lines up in a way that the previous seasons never really did, as far as what we could talk about. For instance, the next episode that we have coming out in 2 weeks is the first Shriek episode, and Shriek is the main villain in the Red Hood book. So I think it'll give us a little bit of it'll be an excuse to talk a little bit more about the book, I think.
That's awesome. And then I almost wanted to. We did our intro. I almost wanted to put in the Beyond music intro because I know you're such a big fan of that.
Well, okay, so the new episode that I put out that came out yesterday, I do walk that back a bit because, as I say in the episode, since I've been cutting these episodes, I've been listening to that song, and every time we watch the show, I don't skip the intro because once the first episode came out of our show, a lot of people were like, "Man, that song is the best. You guys, screw you guys, you don't like that song." So I'm like, all right. So I kept watching the intro, and I was like, all right, I get this. And then when I was cutting the episode together, I listened to it just in my headphones, so it was just the music on the headphones, and I came away thinking, yeah, all right, this is a pretty good song. So I've kind of flipped a little bit on the theme song.
The imagery really does throw it off, though. Like the intro imagery, that's kind of random and it doesn't really get addressed.
It's weird.
It is weird.
Yeah.
I agree with you guys. It's kind of like it's a little cringy sometimes because I don't like. Yeah, you guys made a good point. Like, what's with the hand holding the eyeball randomly? What's with like the teenagers dancing to the music in the club, but all they're doing is just gyrating their hips?
Every time I watch it, I expect it to tell me that I wouldn't download a car, would I?
You wouldn't download a car.
But what now that you've gone through the Beyond or starting to get through the Beyond universe, is there anything that you've started to watch and then you're like, oh my god, I have to draw that, or I got to draw my version of that?
Not yet. We're only a few episodes in, and I'm still kind of acclimating to the style change because so much it's still that Bruce Timm style, but it is very different from the way everything else was in the previous series because there's so much future tech and all that kind of stuff. We just did the Mr. Freeze episode, and I really liked Mr. Freeze's outfit. I thought that was kind of a cool update. I don't know if I love it. I don't know if I love it for him as a character, but I like in the show it worked for me. It kind of reminds me of Kelly Jones's Mr. Freeze from the late 90s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just like the face coming through the
where he's got that kind of like he's a little bit more muscular and kind of big, and it's very harshly lit inside the helmet and stuff. I always like that Mr. Freeze.
Looks like Kane from RoboCop 2. Is it true? Yeah, RoboCop
yes.
2.
Yes.
Kane,
yeah.
I've always loved that. Yeah.
I do want to sort of derail here just because we haven't mentioned it yet, and it's still fresh at the time we were recording this. Rest in peace to Neil Adams. We just lost him 2 days ago as we're recording this. So yeah, that was horrible.
Yeah, I think I can speak for most people in the comics industry to say that I don't think a lot of us do what we do or how we do it without Neil Adams having been around. I have been I just bought a collection of the Danny Ketch 90s Ghost Rider, which was a big favorite of mine that I probably hadn't read in 25, 30 years. And I always loved Mark Teixeira's style. And I was reading those first issues and I was looking at Teixeira's drawing and I just finally put it together. I was like, oh, he's got a lot of Neil Adams in him. He's got a lot of Neil Adams and Bill Sienkiewicz in his art. And I think there's so many people that you can. Bill Sienkiewicz himself is a direct descendant from Neil Adams. Frank Miller, direct descendant from Neil Adams. He is.
I saw Bill Sienkiewicz tweet something, referring to Neil as his artistic father or something like that.
Yeah, he's. I think there's a handful of people since the dawn of modern comics that you can call legitimate game changers, and Neil Adams is definitely one of them. When I was in college, my teacher told me this great story. It was an interview with I think it was at a convention, and Neil was at a table and he was drawing or whatever, and somebody asked him, why did you choose comics? And he grabs a clean sheet of paper, he dips his brush, makes a big circle. He says, "See this? I've just created a universe. All the planets inside, all the stars, all the galaxies, every life form that exists here, I've just created." And then he dipped his brush again and put a big X through it. And he said, "And now I've destroyed it." And that always stuck with me. I was like, yeah, I want the power of God. That's what I want.
And it's not just his art itself that was his impact. Obviously he created so much, he influenced so much of what has come after him, but also he did so much for artist rights and what can be expected now, like what they get for pay and crediting and keeping their own art, whereas the companies used to keep the art pages until Neil said, well, if you're not purchasing those pages for them, you better give them back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, isn't that wild?
Insane.
Was it an interview was it him who was being interviewed and he talked about how he was at like Marvel and someone's whole job all day was to shred original art because there was so much of it just in the back?
Probably, yeah.
And I remember thinking like, holy shit.
As someone who has a lot of original art taking up a lot of inconvenient space in my closet, I can understand it. But again, my art isn't Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby pages, so it's a little bit different.
Lost to time, isn't that just insane? Yeah.
And he was very much the conscience of the industry when it didn't maybe have the one that it needed to have. Like the way he viewed equality and getting past racial stereotypes, like when the Green Lantern John Stewart was being created, and it was at his behest that they created this other Green Lantern, and like, well, no, don't just make him another white guy. You should make him a black character. And that when they were going to come up with the expected story that he was going to be this ex-con who is, no, don't make him something respectable. Like make him an architect. He can be just because he's a black man, he doesn't have to be an ex-convict from the hood. And when they were going to name him something like Lincoln Washington, he's like, no, you can't call him Lincoln Washington. And so the industry didn't have the barometer, the moral compass that it needed to, and Neil was really providing that.
Yeah. Kevin Smith just did a big 5-hour episode compilation of all of the interviews that he did with Neil Adams over the years. And for anyone who's listening, if you haven't listened to those, if you're interested in Neil Adams, listen to those interviews because they're absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, the first one he did on Fat Man on Batman is one of my favorites, which was probably like 10 years ago now.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, amazing storyteller.
Yeah, that's why it was so good. It's because like you just hear him. His stories were just like he's so the way he emphasizes things, and he's just. I mean, you can understand why he's so good at what he does artistically because he knows how to tell a story, and it comes across like amazingly.
Yeah. So. Do you remember those anti-allergy medicine commercials with the bee that had like the Antonio Banderas type voice? It was for like a Flonase type thing.
Vaguely.
His company did those ads.
Oh no way!
Yeah, he did a lot of advertising stuff like that. Yeah.
And it did a lot more than just comics.
Yeah. A lot of I was just gonna say a lot of action figure card art was his stuff.
Yeah, he did it all.
And he was busting his ass till the end, man.
Yeah.
Just like constantly on Instagram lives and stuff and all that stuff. So
But, well, now that I effectively brought everything down, you're welcome.
Yeah, you guys want to talk about childhood trauma or something? All rolling.
Oh man.
But I don't know, we covered your story. We told everyone to get off their asses and pick up Bloody Hel if they haven't already. The Red Hood stuff is coming back, and we will have you back on when it is time for those books.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Is there anything else we need to cover here before we let Clay get back to real life?
Just go get Bloody Hel.
All right, well, we can leave it there, and we can let you get back to real life. We do appreciate you doing this. It was great to finally make this happen.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Sean has nothing but good things to say about talking with you guys. So I was glad to finally meet all you.
Awesome.
Well,
Man.
very appreciated. Right, man. Well, everyone have a good night. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Clay, for doing this. And we'll chat again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.